Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for making it. Welcome to the February 27th Social Equity Working Group meeting. I'm calling today's meeting to order at 9:33 a.m. Before we get started, I'm going to ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and walk us through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting.
Announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe I shared with this group last month, our chair from last year now has a conflict, so we're waiting on our board chair to appoint a new chair. But in the meantime, I'm here and will be chairing this morning's meeting. It takes a village, that's right. And now we'll move on. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in the region, the most of any county in the United States. The land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now I will ask our clerk to review the meeting process for both working group members as well as members of the public who wish to participate.
As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to email comments, the public may also provide live comments during today's meeting. So if you're a member of the public here in the room and would like to provide comments on an item, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk. If you're a member of the public joining us on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand during the item if you'd like that you'd like to comment on. The raise hand feature can be found on the Zoom toolbar for those who are joining via computer or by entering *9 for those joining via telephone. The clerk will then call on members of the public first, followed by in-person members of the public first, followed by virtual commenters. Commenters will be called by the name or by the last 3 digits of telephone number for those joining via telephone.
Thank you, Michael. Do members of this working group have any questions on the meeting procedure before we continue? Okay, great. Let's begin our meeting with our first item. This is member and public comments. Since we have no member comments, clerk, are there any public comments for this item?
We have no public comment, Chair.
Thank you. We do have two special guests, Antoinette and Mario. You're always here, just not at the dais. Mario Orso, our CEO, is joining us today and wants to share some remarks with this group, so we're going to pass it over to him.
Hi, how are you? Technically, I have not been at this working group, but I have met some of you in some other engagements. So, for those I haven't met, again, my name is Mario Orso, and I have lost track if it's 8 or 9 months since I started here in the position. Prior, I had been working with the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, for 33 years there in different roles, the majority of the time in San Diego, and a brief rotation assignment as the director in Orange County. So I'm really, really excited to be here. I will be leaving shortly just because we had some other meetings going on, but I wanted to come and say hi. And more than anything, I think there's been a lot of questions recently of what's going on with all the different things that are happening and coming out of Washington. Um, I think your organizations are probably also going through that and trying to figure out as you're going for grants and different outreaches with the federal government. You know, there may be rules and regulations that are imposed, but that doesn't change who we are and how we think. And as an organization, SANDAG has been very clear through Board Policy 25 and as well as our board of our commitment to equity that the Board of Directors put out a resolution in 2021 where it kind of creates this group of engagements. So as we are all navigating this period of time of unknowns, you know, the thing is, look, if the federal government wants us to change some of our wording, well, let it be, but that doesn't change what we are, what we think, what we feel. And I wanted to highlight that as an organization and as the leader of the organization. To me, that's very important. It was very important for my team who asked me to talk about this subject. Um, they're just hard times right now, right? And we're all learning how to navigate the realities that we're facing. And, you know, like my dad would tell me, grab the bull by the horns and just ride it, right? So I think that's where we're at. And welcome again. And hopefully this is a very successful and fruitful discussion.
Thank you so much, Mario. I think we'll take a pause and I'll happy to open up if any members of the working group have comments or questions for Mario since he is here with us today. Okay. Thanks for stopping by, Mario. We appreciate it. I have a few comments I wanted to share. First and foremost, I think several of you were at the joint working group that took place 2 weeks ago. Sorry, I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure. Okay. We'll ignore it.
You know, as you know, we're moving. So right now we have temporary audio equipment, and we're going through the school of hard knocks here of you know, that maybe our vendor's equipment is not the best. The console was great. The team liked it. They could play music and everything. But we've been having some challenges, so apologies for that.
There was some music going this morning and there was no scratchiness. So I must like the music better, not my voice.
It's just the microphones that happened in one of our meetings earlier this week too, so.
I'll try not to touch it. Okay, I'll try to keep my remarks short. Thank you for everybody who was at the joint working group. It was very nice as always to have all your voices there and to have you interacting and talking with our folks. I think they came away with a lot of good information and have even said, oh, based off some of the comments we heard, you know, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. So I just wanted to share that. Also, if you didn't pick up Vision Zero materials last month, or I think a few organizations liked them so much and wanted more, we do have some of those in the back. So before you leave, Jorge will be back there, but you can just grab them, those bags. And then I have to say for the record, I provided our clerk with a copy of the Regional Plan Social Equity Working Group's most current membership list for 2025, which includes the members associations with nonprofits. Michael, please include that list in the official record and minutes in accordance with Government Code 1091. And this is related to that form that we all emailed, that we sent out and asked you all to email. So thank you, or to fill out. So thank you for doing that. And then finally, Mario just mentioned, we're moving. I'm sure you can see it as you're walking through the building. We don't have confirmation on the March 27th meeting, whether it's going to be here or the new building yet. So I would just ask you for the next couple months, please watch out for that. And I will do my very best to like over communicate where it's going to be at, because I don't want you showing up to the wrong place. Okay. Now we will proceed to approving agenda item number 2, which,
Where are we moving to?
We're moving down the road to a building called West. It's a new building. It's on Broadway near
remember
First,
that.
near First
Okay.
and Front. So still great transit access. Union, is that it? Union, okay, yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
So we're on the ground, we have the ground floor there, which is nice, a big space for meetings, which was great because we won't have to do off-site meetings so frequently. But with any construction project, we've hit some hiccups and bumps. And so our staff is primarily working remotely so we can decommission this space and get that space set up. Our hope is to be able to have meetings over there by first week of March, mid-March, but we'll keep everyone posted on where meetings are. So pay
Okay.
attention when we send out the agendas and meeting notices,
Why are you looking at
so
me?
you don't
when
show
say
up at
that?
the wrong space. Old habits die hard, Barry, right? So.
okay, item number 2, the January 23rd and February 13th Social Equity Working Group meeting minutes. Do working group members have any comments or questions? Okay. Any comments from members of the public on this item, clerk?
Public comment, Chair.
Thank you. As a reminder, you don't have to have been present in order to vote on the meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve? Carol, and can we get a second? Barry? Clerk, can you please call for the vote?
If we could just do a hand raise vote, and then we'll just note the abstentions.
Everyone in favor, say aye, or raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed, say nay.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next item. To kick us off, we are going to have Michael Turlip and Evan Funk from SANDAG. They're going to present an update on the Caltrans Planning Grant-funded study On the Move, as well as ask for some feedback from you all. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? It's just going to be me today, by the way. So, hello, my name is Michael Turlip. I'm a regional planner here with the San Diego Association of Governments. I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about an awesome project we're working on called On the Move. Usually, a lot of the projects that SANDAG are working on, for example, the Rapid 235 or the South Bay Rapid, take a long time to implement. We're talking 20 plus years, which means that our riders don't see the benefits of these things for a long time. With On the Move, we're trying to look at how we can utilize low-cost, near-term projects called quick builds to make some significant improvements to our bus systems in the near term. Quick builds open up the opportunity for us and our partners they open up a lot of opportunities for us and our partners because they utilize these low-cost materials such as paint and bollards that can be deployed in a short time frame, which means that we can bring some much-needed solutions to some of the challenges facing our buses in the near term much sooner than a traditional transit project can. And another major benefit of these types of projects is that they are temporary, which means that the public can interact with these changes first before we make them permanent. And so they can see how they impact their communities before making any significant judgments on them. And this is important because it allows us to get experimental. And so there's a lot of different transit treatments that are perceived as scary to the public. For example, bus-only lanes or bus bulbs that because it's temporary, we can see how the public perceives them before making them permanent. And we actually have a great local example of this here on El Cajon Boulevard. And that is when the City of San Diego and MTS partnered together to lay down 2.7 miles of bus-only lanes in order to improve the travel times of the Rapid 215 bus. And this was originally going to be an 18-month pilot project, started in 2019, and it was really going to evaluate what the operational benefits were of a bus-only lane, as well as what the public acceptance would be to these roadway changes. And I don't know if you've driven on El Cajon Boulevard, but these changes are still here to this day, which means that it was a successful pilot project. And that's because it successfully reduced the travel times for the Rapid 215 by 2 minutes, and in general was well accepted by the public. So what exactly does On the Move provide? What you see on the screen are the 4 different phases of work for On the Move. And the first phase is understanding what challenges face our bus systems, so we understand exactly what we're trying to solve for. Additionally, we'll be working alongside our transit operators, MTS and NCTD, to identify what bus corridors would benefit most from these quick build treatments. We're also creating an inventory of all the different quick build treatments that could potentially be utilized here in San Diego, and we're looking to understand what are the benefits of these treatments as well as the associated costs for each. And then taking the lessons from those 2 first phases, we're going to look to exemplify what these improvements can look like by creating a high-level design for 2 different priority improvement corridors, and we'll be working directly alongside our jurisdictions to bring those improvements to completion. And then lastly, we'll be creating various different guidelines for the different kind of strategies that you can utilize and we can utilize to successfully implement quick builds. What you see on the screen are the top 20 different priority improvement corridors that we have already selected alongside MTS and NCTD that we will be focusing on throughout this project. And for each, we are going to be creating individualized quick build recommendations. And in order to successfully do this, we are going to analyze each corridor through a variety of different data sets, just so we can understand what the unique characteristics of each corridor really are. In general, those data sets fall into 3 different categories. The first being understanding what affects the rider experience. Next being what are the different equity considerations on each corridor. Then lastly, what is the feasibility for deploying quick builds on each of these corridors. In general, we have a fairly expedited timeline for this project, and so we'll be looking to complete several different milestones over the next couple months, including a significant amount of stakeholder outreach like we're doing today. But ultimately, we're hoping to release a final draft of the report in early summer. We're very excited for this project. We are excited to use it as a great foundation for working alongside our partners to deploy quick builds and ultimately to improve our bus systems. But that's our presentation today. I'm excited to hear any feedback that you all may have for us and to answer any questions you have.
Clerk, do we have any public comments for this item?
We have no public comment, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Michael. Do members, Carol?
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation.
Of course.
I was just wondering what the criteria was why you selected the locations that you did, and was that brought here first, or did you determine that as SANDAG?
So we worked directly with MTS and NCTD. They've done a variety of different studies. For example, there's the BREEZE study with NCTD where they've done full system analyses of their whole entire bus system. So they have a lot of internal information that we wanted to work with, and we are on a very expedited timeline. So we just went with what they think would be best. And then obviously, a lot of the projects and recommendations from this report can be utilized anywhere in the county, but we wanted to use these top 20 corridors as examples.
Thank you. I did see El Cajon, so thank you.
Of course.
Rose Nangoyo?
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to know, are you going to be adding more, or this is just it for now?
Once this project is completed, it's just going to be the 20. Of course, I think we'd be open to discussing with any organization who would want to deploy these recommendations on any other corridors, but within the report, it's only going to be these 20.
I could just add to that. This was just intended to produce some prototypes. And so these are strategies that can be applied to roadways throughout the region. So there's a variety of, roadway types that were selected. So it's not that these are the only roadways that'll be considered for these types of improvements. It was really just to develop some prototypes, some examples that we can, consider as we're planning the rapid system and bus system for the region.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention this is a blueprint that we want all of our different jurisdictions and local organizations like yourselves to utilize.
Goyo, and then Barry.
Thank you for the presentation, Michael. I just want to highlight that I think this is an excellent idea just because in our conversations with the community, this a theme that always comes up is the length of time a project or infrastructure project, the benefit to the community takes. And I think these are great steps towards identifying which you already have and implement something that in a time period that people can really see, because I think this is going to help the long-term projects really kind of the realization of these projects. Another question I had for you was, you mentioned that this summer you can do the study of these 20 projects, but what's the timeline after that, just to have an idea?
We don't have any specific funding for after this project, but
No, I'm saying that you said summer's the report, correct?
oh yeah, what's the specific? So
And then after that summer, what's the timeline?
I can tell you we have 6 rapids that are in the planning stages now. We're kicking them off. We've kicked off 2 of them, one that's from Ramona into Sabre Springs, and then another one we just kicked off that hits El Cajon, Santee, the 52, UTC, Kearney Mesa area. Those projects, to be full rapid projects with all the bells and whistles, would take, up to 10 to 15 years, depending on funding, because of the infrastructure needed, right? So we're looking at how we could do a phased approach with those projects and get something up and running sooner. We're using some of these kind of quick build strategies while we continue to seek funding and do the work to implement the full project.
So there is going to be an infrastructure built, and that's going to happen in the next year or 2, or is it going to be?
No, these projects are in early planning, so even though it's
Okay, I see.
quicker,
I
right?
see.
And that's not to say that they couldn't be implemented if a jurisdiction wanted to go ahead and implement them, like the city of San Diego did on Park or on El Cajon Boulevard. But for our projects that we're planning, future projects, those are years out still. Even as quick build, it'll take time to do the route planning, to determine if we need to do environmental analysis, to raise the funds. Right now, those projects are only funded through planning, right?
And so this summer is when we would know about what these 20 spaces need, correct?
Well,
The
we'll have a report that
Right.
has kind of an analysis of all of these different quick build strategies. There'll be some conceptual designs done, not for all 20. We don't have the funding to do all 20. It's a small study, but for a couple, we'll handpick and we'll do some conceptual designs for those. And then, hopefully there'll be some opportunities to implement those to maybe serve some of the existing bus services. But there's no money to go into implementation. So this is really to get the juices flowing, to have something ready, but we don't have any money to implement any quick build projects right now. And we don't make decisions about local streets and roads. Our local jurisdictions do, right? So this is kind of a resource that we have, a toolkit that we have, but ultimately the cities are going to have to decide if these are improvements that they want to make to their roadways.
Surprised Southeast San Diego's not on this list. But I guess that's something I need to bring up with MTS. Is that correct?
Again, just because they're not on this list doesn't mean Southeast San Diego isn't a candidate. This was a screening process went through with MTS and NCTD to identify candidate roadways based on challenges that they're having with bus operations. So this is not restricted to any of the corridors that you saw in the list. It's more of a toolkit to show what's possible and to do some conceptual designs. And again, we're only going to do conceptual designs for a couple of the 20. So you have to pare down.
Okay.
It's a small Caltrans planning grant that we
And
got to do this work.
This
So
is familiar with the old Better Blocks. Remember that program through the state?
which one?
Better Blocks.
I don't remember that one.
It was exactly this. You remember that? That was when we came in and temporarily put down, I'm going to say infrastructure, but it was literally paint and everything to see what crosswalks look like in an area. We changed the different colors of the crosswalks and you remember that? And we were trying to improve that. So it looks like we're coming back around to that. So it's good to hear. And yeah, I don't even want to think how long ago that was, but it's good that it's back. It's good to hear.
In the 20, so they're not going to be concept plans for all 20. There's going to be only selected. And do we know what that criteria process is, or is there any opportunity to have like public input for what projects are selected, or yeah, I guess that's my question.
Can you repeat that? So for the top 20 or the top 2 that are going to get that preliminary design?
Whoever's actually going to get the design,
Okay,
is there an
so-
opportunity to have input?
We have already gone to a few different groups to get feedback. We have our what's the group? We have our community outreach group, which has all of our different community organizations. We went to them seeking what they would think would be most important to what categories would be most important to select these through. We also have a PDT who's informing this
PDT
process,
means
but-
Project Development Team.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, product development team. And so we work through those different categories that I showed you before. And again, because we have a limited amount of time, I guess this doesn't work, but I showed you those different categories of data analysis that we're utilizing. And that is what we're going to, that's what we used to decide which 2 priority improvement corridors to do those designs for. And ultimately, these are just going to be to exemplify what this can look like. But we did consider equity considerations and all those different things. So unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to take in too much more information at this point in time because we're beginning preliminary design at the beginning of March. Yeah.
Provide your input today if you have some thoughts, ideas that you want to share, for sure.
But if the city and national city said to you, well, if you do the model for us, we'll provide the funding, then you would do the design for them, or no?
I think that's something we could be interested in considering.
Okay,
I don't think that's a sure yes at this moment. I think that's accurate.
thank you.
We do have a rapid project, though, that we're planning that does go through National City. It's the Rapid 625. So there'll be much more detailed work done for that particular route in the coming months. We're kicking off the next stage of planning for that, and you probably saw some of the conceptual designs that were done in the early planning for that. So that's already a candidate outside of this work because of the 625 project that we're planning.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. I think this is great. As Goya said, just the approach in urban planning, pop-up urbanism is a really good tool for the community to experience. And so they're bought in, right? So they see the benefit. I think my question is community engagement. Are we going to participate in that? Are we doing surveys? Are you going on the buses? How are you asking people?
We are utilizing a variety of different previous public outreach data. So we have our onboard survey that we're utilizing, and we're also using those different studies from NCTD and MTS.
And our
to
public
inform
outreach that we did for the regional plan, CMCPs. So we have a lot of input and data on what people want to see out of transit, faster, more frequent, now, not waiting 10, 15 years. It doesn't have to be perfect, just, make those operational improvements now. So that was really the basis for this. But just like this is on quick build projects, this is kind of a quick build study. It was, we have a really short amount of time and a small amount of money to produce this. So that's why we're not doing as robust of the outreach effort. We're building on work that we've already
that's
done and outreach that we've done. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. And so just on average, what is a quick build? Is it 5, 10?
It's 1 to 2 years. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so-
the
So
implementation.
once
stuff.
funding comes in, these 10, 20 items could happen in 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, and we'd love for any organization or any jurisdiction to pick them up from there, and we'd be happy to work with them. And
Because remember, SANDAG doesn't have authority over local streets and roads, right? So
Mhm.
ultimately, these improvements have to be embraced by, adopted by local jurisdictions, and then, of course, the transit operator, because it's intended for their service. So SANDAG can help facilitate those things, but we aren't the implementing agency.
Okay, so just to understand, the recommendations, is it things being done to the road, or is it like a pop-up bus stop? Because we want to test out a bus
A little
stop
more
over there.
permanent than a pop-up, right? So
Okay.
we're looking at like, think about El Cajon Boulevard and the bus lane that was added there and the signage. It's mostly
Yeah.
paint, but the roadway was completely reconfigured, right?
Okay.
So it's not quite
It's a road
pop-up.
stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or the bollards, the plastic bollards for the bikeways that are kind of temporary in nature. That's a quick build project, right? So.
Thank you.
What are the chances of getting MTS here to explain what they're doing? Huh?
Microphone?
It is. I'm just not close enough. There you go. What are the chances of getting MTS here and talk to us about what they want to do? Can we make that happen?
Yeah, MTS is always willing to
Okay.
join us for presentations. They were part of the kickoff we did for the Rapid project last week. They come to a lot of our
Okay.
meetings. So, yep.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the reports. So once you've put together the reports, do those go to the local jurisdictions and then there's discussion from there? I mean, are we able to get involved at that point and discuss these things with the local jurisdictions?
Absolutely, we encourage you to do that. But SANDAG meets regularly with all of our local jurisdictions through our working groups. And we have our mobility working group, which is the transportation directors, traffic engineers from the cities. They weigh in on this project. We'll be, taking it around and showcasing it. And MTS and NCTD are already involved. They're bought into the project already. But absolutely, if you want to, encourage, advocate for these projects within your local jurisdictions, we hope you will.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll be having 2 different workshops with all the different jurisdictions that fall under NCTD or MTS's jurisdictions, just to get them on board with this project. So they will be informed that this is something we're working on. And so if you do want to talk to them, they should know about this.
No other comments, questions from members of the working group? Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Antoinette, for making all those connections to work that's happening and how the planning study plays into that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item. Item number 4 is a presentation on the Flexible Fleets Pilot Grant Program Call for Projects. Jenny Russo and Emily Doss from SANDAG are here, and they're going to provide us an overview of the new grant program, as well as have a discussion with you to get some feedback on the draft call for projects. Welcome, Jenny and Emily.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for having us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to hear about this new program. My name is Emily Doss. I'm a regional planner at SANDAG, and I'm joined here with Jenny Russo, our grants program manager. So we're here today to talk about SANDAG's new grant program, as Paula had mentioned, which is an opportunity for local jurisdictions across the region to pilot a flexible fleet within their jurisdiction. So let's start with a reminder of what flexible fleets are. Flexible fleets are on-demand transportation services that can be used to help people reach local destinations and connect to high-speed transit. Flexible fleet categories include micromobility, which are small, low-speed vehicles such as e-scooters, bikes, and e-bikes, often known as scooter share or bike share. Neighborhood electric vehicle shuttles are a type of microtransit service. They are lower speed electric shuttles used for short trips, typically up to 3 miles, and they typically operate on a fixed route or an on-demand route. Car share is a service that allows people to rent a car for a short period of time, often by the hour. Ride share is carpool, vanpool, and pooled ride-hailing services such as Lyft shared or organized van pools. And lastly, microtransit is multi-passenger vehicles that can carry 5 to 15 passengers and provide rides within a defined service area. These services are typically reserved through a mobile app or through a call center for people without access to a smartphone. In partnership with local agencies and organizations, SANDAG has launched 2 pilots in Oceanside and Pacific Beach, and we're launching a 3rd pilot in southeastern San Diego later this year. Several flexible fleet microtransit and nav shuttle programs have been piloted in downtown, National City, Coronado, Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, Carlsbad, North Park City Heights, with more pilots underway as well. In 2021, we received feedback from many of you through our CBO outreach and mobility needs assessments on flexible fleets specifically. In South County, we heard from the community that they wanted to focus on connections to essential services, transit stations and stops, and to community spaces. We also heard a desire for improved transportation infrastructure and amenities in several communities and expansion of micromobility programs. In North County, we heard a focus on senior mobility needs, connections between urban and rural communities, connections to sprinter stations, and connecting jurisdictions and communities along the SR 78 corridor. And then finally, in Central County, we heard a focus on connections to schools and jobs, essential services, transit again, community spaces, especially in hilly areas like Paradise Hills and City Heights. And lastly, we heard a desire for active transportation improvements to ensure safe, flexible fleet operations, like for bike share and scooter share. Flexible fleets offer ADA accessible ride options. This includes door-to-door service in service areas with what's known as a virtual stop model, where folks would otherwise walk to a nearby corner to get picked up by the service. And then we also offer call center options for folks without access to a smartphone, as I had mentioned earlier. Service zones can be easily modified to reach underserved populations. For example, we could modify a service area to reach a specific senior housing facility. And the SANDAG pilots also offer language assistance options. All right, there's a refresher on all things flexible fleets for you guys. Now on to the main topic, the grant program. I just wanted to share with you guys our program goal. This program is intended to fund projects that expand shared mobility travel choices, enhance transit connections, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and vehicle miles traveled. The Flexible Fleet Pilot Grant Program will provide initial funding to seed projects that can serve as models for the region and sustain operations following the expiration of the grant. We received feedback from several 2024 presentations on what is important for flexible fleets generally and how SANDAG should evaluate project proposals. We saw common themes around the need for financial sustainability, transit integration, and we're hoping that these pilots will continue to influence travel behavior and help us meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets throughout the region. So now I'll pass it over to Jenny to share about the specifics of the criteria and the call for projects, which is why we're here seeking your feedback today.
Good morning, working group members. So based on the feedback that we receive from the Flexible Fleets Task Force and our Mobility Working Group, the eligible applicants are shown here in this blue section of this table. So they'll include local, state, federal, and tribal agencies, transit districts, and military institutions. So CBOs and nonprofits aren't directly eligible, but you can partner with one of these eligible applicants to see a service that would be implemented in your area. There'll be two types of eligible grants, as you can see here. The first would be service operations, so the actual delivery of that service, whether it's directly through that applicant or through a subcontract with a particular vendor. And then the other portion is all of the capital improvements that are needed to support that service. So things like vehicle procurements, buying software or hardware, or doing any other like on-the-ground infrastructure improvements like charging, docking stations, anything for right-of-way, signage, wayfinding, those types of activities. And then all of these services would need to be provided within San Diego County based on our funding. So in terms of funding, we have $4.5 million in funding that we would provide. We're estimated that it will expand over a 3-year period. So these pilots would be expected to last somewhere between 1 to 3 years. And the maximum award amount that a single applicant could receive would be $1 million. This is federal funding that we have, so each of our applicants would be required to provide a match of non-federal funding of 11.47%. And they'd also have to agree to the standard federal provisions, which include things like non-discrimination, Title VI, and of course ADA that Emily mentioned earlier. In terms of timeline, so we are starting off our process coming through our working groups and our transportation committee through the end of next month, asking for feedback and input on the criteria, eligibility, and things like that. We'll then bring the call for projects back to our transportation committee and our board of directors in April and ask for their approval. That will open the call for projects, which will have a 90-day application window. So applications would be due in July. Between July and September, we will have our external evaluation panel convene and review all of those applications, score them, and come up with our list of the application order. And then back in September, we'll return to the Transportation Committee and the Board of Directors asking for their approval of the funding recommendations. Our grant agreements would probably be signed somewhere in the November timeframe, and services would begin as early as 2026 and can last all the way through 2029, depending on how the applicant has kind of scoped the schedule of their project. So the evaluation criteria, we included them in your materials. They are attachment 1, so there's a lot more detail there than you can see on this slide. As you notice, the criteria with the highest weight are financial sustainability, feasibility, and integration with transit. So this is picking up on the outreach and that we heard earlier through our flexible fleets and our mobility working group. And then the additional criteria here are shown. So equity and accessibility as another large component of the program, engagement plan, and then matching funds rounds us out. So we're asking today for your feedback on the criteria. So if there's anything that you think we've missed or you want us to highlight or emphasize that's in there, please take a look at that criteria. As I mentioned, it's attachment 1, and let us know if you think there's anything in there that we need to make an adjustment on. And with that, I will turn it back to Paula, and happy to answer any questions that you may have on this new program.
Thank you, Jenny and Emily. Gemily, I was trying to put your names together. Clerk, do we have any public comments for this item?
Public comment, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of this group? Oyo?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had a quick question regarding the funding accessibility. Does this also account for existing programs that already have invested in the capital and not continue the services?
So at this point, we have decided that programs that have been funded through SANDAG already will only be applicable or eligible, for funding if they are expanding the service area and can make a case for why that community should be included in the service area, just to make sure that communities across the region have opportunity for these funds.
But ultimately, our transportation committee and board have to approve the evaluation criteria, so it could change as we go through this process of taking feedback. But the whole goal is to start new flexible fleet pilots. We've got, 50 some in our regional plans. We want to start to have more in communities, and we want these to be sustainable. So if we're constantly having to provide funding for these services, they're not sustainable in the long run. The money that we have is really for pilot projects. It can't be used for operations ongoing, so.
Okay, well, then you just answered my question. We're starting one, and as a nonprofit, we got funding from the state, but it's going to launch at the same time in a way, and it's very expensive programs. So I was wondering, what was the criteria? Because it's not up yet, and also we're not a local authority nonprofit, so we have to be a partnership. Anyway, thanks.
I saw many hands. We'll go Barry, Marjana.
My turn. I'd mentioned this a couple times to a couple of people. I wanted to sort of bring this up as perhaps something to check the feasibility of having some of these flexible fleet entities like, well, to get the community an opportunity to invest in these programs personally. There's something up in LA that seems to be working pretty well that, and I don't know the whole details, but I'd like for us to try to look into it. And it's like having shares, right, for the residents. And it could provide a revenue stream, and it certainly will give the residents some ownership into their program. And I don't, like I said, the concept sounded great because it really, really could potentially, but I don't even know the return on investments, right? Of if it is anything, you know what I mean? But I would like the idea of that concept if we can somehow leave that door open to include residents in investing in these efforts. That might help with sustainability. And like I said, it could also, it almost ensures them talking more about it in their neighborhoods because they are invested in it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Barry. And we're going to be planning this spring a workshop panel, bringing in providers of flexible fleet services, different program models from elsewhere. So that will be one that we can look into and see if we can invite them to perhaps participate as a unique funding model for these types of, these services are very expensive.
Oh, I know.
Very expensive. The cost per rider is high, and there isn't really a good source of funding to pay for them currently. So, yeah.
Okay, just a thought.
And I'll mention too, Barry, the Pacific Beach pilot was funded through parking meter revenue. And that funding is managed by community members that are a part of the Parking Advisory Council. So that's another kind of example where the community is managing these funds, and the revenue may not be coming, straight from the community members. They may be coming mostly from visitors to the area. So that's also another funding model that is popular across many flexible fleet pilots all over the nation.
Multiple revenue streams.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the parking wasn't enough to cover the full
No, it was
cost,
not.
which is why we no longer, yeah.
Yeah.
Marjana, you had your hand up?
I do. I have two questions. The first was you had military institutions as people that can apply, or entities that can apply. And so is that, so my dad's a veteran, and so they give rides to like the VA hospital for their appointments. Is that meant for that, or is there conceivably, could they apply for things that are on base only and not intersecting with,
Yeah,
up
so
to
I
that?
mean, I think that the flexibility is there for military institutions to apply for whatever they think the service, wherever they think it would fit best. We presented to the military working group 2 weeks ago, and we definitely heard interest from base-specific programs. So I think that after they digest that and talk amongst themselves, I think that they'll propose a project based on their needs.
They have some big first mile, last mile issues for many of the bases. So getting from transit on base, and then once on base, how do you get to where you need to go? Because base sometimes is like a small city.
Yeah.
So that's what I think they're looking into, is how do we get more people to use transit by solving this challenge of the first mile, last mile.
And then the second one, it's kind of a thought, so help me parse it out. But you have some evaluation criteria for equity and accessibility. And you have, I don't know, I feel like it's maybe a loose interpretation. So I was thinking, you have some examples here, right? And so you're trying to give examples of covering like language equity and like ride booking options is what you have here, unbanked riders, all these things that are great. But is it conceivable that the way that this is written, or the way this reads, someone could have a very specific population? And so could they be, we're gonna target Latino population, we're gonna do our diversity in is gonna be in language translation. We'll hire bilingual staff. So is there something that, I guess my question is there, does this set us up that somebody would get all 15 points for kind of maybe the depth of how they're going, you know, to target one instead of maybe appealing to a broad range of people and needs? And would they still be eligible to get all 15 points? Because technically they're hitting maybe every modality, but only for a specific population. And then we're alienating other populations that still exist in our communities.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful with that because with the funding, like for accessibility, you know, it has to be equal. So you couldn't be singling out a specific portion of the population. The funding doesn't allow that. But I hear what you're saying, to kind of look at this and make sure that it's not targeting or kind of forcing this concentration in a particular area for a particular purpose. They could, in terms of points, yes, like if somebody has a program that's focused that way, they could receive points, but it may be that it ends up losing points in different other criteria around this because of the way that the program is tailored. So it may not rise to the top of the list either, but that's something we can look at.
Okay.
So that it's not artificially driving something that's not what we're looking for here.
Thank you. Wait, Clara, you had your hand up? I don't want to ignore this side if there are hands up on this. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. National City has definitely made good use of our transportation. I had a couple of questions. One of them, or maybe this one is maybe a comment, but in the criteria, there's the engagement plan. Something that we see frequently enough is that projects that happen in the jurisdiction don't actually get a lot of community engagement. And so I imagine that there's probably like a workaround in how, you know, a jurisdiction might present a project and have an engagement plan that doesn't actually engage like a broad, you know, representation of the community. And so just to kind of uplift the importance of having like a really robust engagement plan so that it does meet the community needs. So that's more of a comment. But then my other, I guess they're both comments. My other one, kind of jumping off of what Barry has suggested with having, you know, community investment, is also thinking of local businesses who could benefit from more people being able to access their services. So I'm thinking of like grocery stores that are inaccessible to people, you know, if they're able to see the benefit of, you know, this type of transit option in order to get more folks to their business. So that could be a strategy as well. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'd like to respond, though it wasn't a question, to the first comment. I think that this is why we're really looking for applications that have partnered with community organizations too, to ensure that the community is engaged thoroughly throughout the course of the pilot as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Any other comments? That's quiet today. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny and Emily, not Gemily.
Thank you.
And it looks like we are going to give you quite a bit of time back today. I know that went really fast. We're going to move on to our next item, which is our adjournment. Our next meeting is going to take place Thursday, March 27th, still the same day. Keep an eye out for any changes in the location. If we are not going to be here, I will triple communicate instructions for the new building, getting there, and all the good things. But thank you all for being here for an hour today. Nice to see you. We're adjourned at 10:27.